Hello and welcome back to the world's premier unintentional shitcoin podcast, the only podcast of its kind that uses words like Wankel rotary engine and spongulus. Don't think I'll ever actually do a podcast. Couldn't really show charts or anything, but we do have some charts for you today. By request, we will be looking at KSM, FTT, DOT. Of course, always look at ETH and Bitcoin. First on our list today, KSM. We'll be looking at the Bitcoin pair. Someone requested this and they were asking specifically for it because they felt that it was kind of mimicking Bitcoin. So we want to see if that's really the case. And the first thing I like to do is just throw a line down at the midpoint of my RSI to see where we've been. Where we've been so far has been obviously pretty bullish. Lately, of course, you can see that we've taken a turn for the worse. This shouldn't be too difficult. We can throw down immediately a resistance at the bottom of this previous formation, and we can see that the RSI, not the RSI, the EMA has failed quite catastrophically. So really what we're looking for is, hello Apuman, welcome. Nice to see you here tonight or today, wherever you live, I don't know. But our question with this is going to be, where is support most likely to show itself? I think judging by sort of the top of this previous formation, you know, you can go all the way up here, but that's a bit closer to what we've already marked. Remembering, of course, that supports and resistances are kind of zones and not exact points. I would just call the top of this wick as being part of the formation we've already marked. So looking for the next position down. What we really want to see is, where are we likely to find support? And I think the most likely place is going to be around here. Somewhere in this little sideways formation, which is the only point on this big parabolic bull run that we had here that we really saw any retracement. Those tend to be good places to look when you're trying to find a support on the way down. And people always mark these differently. Sometimes people will go all the way to including both wicks on those formations. I tend to just look kind of toward the bodies. It gives you a tighter range, and you can see that this lines out on the left side with that wick high. You've got a wick and three bodies playing off of it here. So I think if you're looking for a formation that's going to give support going on KSM's future here, that's your most likely immediate support. This is a weekly, so remember that it is a weekly, and when you have a weekly support fail like this has now, you don't tend to recover very quickly. So you might even see an issue with looking for the next support below this one. You might want to look another down just in case this turns out to be nothing, because there really aren't many candle bodies here. And I think you would have something, you know, around this formation is where you would probably be looking. So going a little bit further down, you can paint a support block here as well. And you can see that it captures some near enough tops, kind of the tops of these, the tops of this, the bodies over here. So this is your next likely formation on the way down. Now, if this is to remain bearish, you've got a long way down. You're nowhere near oversold. So it wouldn't be too surprising that if KSM is entering like a full bear, that you would come down toward this level. That's what I'd be looking for, unless it sees some like immediate relief off of this weekly and kind of reclaims and continues, or if it can start to crab a little bit, that would be ideal. But given this huge red candle, as we've given up the RSI and the EMA at the same time, that combination is usually pretty bad. That's why I always have those two indicators It's one of the reasons I always have those two indicators at the same time on my charts. So I would assume that we're going to head toward this area. The 0.003 is where I would be looking for the first signs of life. I wouldn't be too interested in trying to play this level. I would be more interested in seeing this level fail and shorting down below, or seeing this level hold and looking for the previous support that's now resistance to break and continue upward. If you want to see where these levels fall on the daily, we can zoom in and you can see it's sort of a close enough, kind of makes sense, right? This weekly level we marked, there's a lot of interaction here. You can see that it is also a daily support at one point. And the weekly resistance that we've marked is sort of the bottom of this formation. You've got like this wick bottom, and now it's acting a bit as a daily support, or daily resistance as well, rather. So on the daily, you might see some relief. It is oversold on the daily, so maybe this weekly will give us a little bit of a spring. But again, unless this breaks and becomes support again, I would not expect that spring to really amount to anything. I would expect it to just be a relief rally before continued dump. So that's KSM. Let's take a look at FTT. We'll try to get through these a little bit quicker today, trying to speed things up for everyone. FTT, another coin that is kind of criticized as mirroring Bitcoin a little too much. And it's very simple to see why, especially if you look at the recent price action. It very much mirrors the price action that Bitcoin has put forth. So you can extend this support, or this resistance, sorry, I keep saying that. You can extend this resistance to be around there. You can see the 36.85, something like that as our local resistance. If you're looking for a support, you might look for something more like this. And again, you have to remember that supports are not exact numbers, they're areas, so you don't have to freak out about this not touching exactly. This is a close enough. And this has been the range that we've been staying in for several weeks now. And with that failing, with us getting a body close below that, unless this somehow turns into a wick this week and reclaims this, and we close above to continue the crab walk, we have to assume that we're going to head downward. And on the way down, we really don't have a whole lot. If you look at this nice gigantic bull run where we got just RSI didn't matter and there was no retracement whatsoever, that makes it really hard to tell where we might go for support. So I think the most reasonable place to draw a line would be somewhere around here, where you have this wick top and you've got a little bit of interaction before you continue your spring upward. But for a little bit, it looked like we were kind of stalling out. These weren't very impressive green candles. These were people kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. And then once we broke through this point, people said, okay, it's go time. And you get these huge greens. But the issue that I have with calling this a support is that it's so far away. Granted, this is thin air. There's really nothing here to look at. So with this being as far down as it is on the RSI, I think you're going to hit oversold long before you get to 11. I don't think that's really a reasonable target. I think if you're talking about a situation like this, you're more likely to somewhere in this no man's land around one of these wicks, you know, somewhere in here, you would probably find a new support. If you're not just going to, you know, be a perma bear market down to zero kind of person, I don't really think you're going to make it here. I really don't think that'll happen. I think you'll find a new support somewhere, even if it's ultimately rejected down, or whether it goes up and reclaims. I think this no man's land area will be where you find your new support on FTT. But with the weekly failing, with this popping down through the bottom, and already it's a lower low, very barely if you're looking at the wick, it is beneath this one. So you're posting a much lower high and you're in the process of posting a lower low. No matter where this weekly closes, it's already got a lower low in. So there's no real argument to be too bullish on this. Should be looking for some downside here. Next we'll look at DOT. I've already marked this one a little bit. It's quite an old chart, but still sort of checking out here. So we came up and we had basically this entire area was just a big crab zone. But since then, we've fallen out of that zone. We had a failed breakout into, you know, the lowest high we'd had through the whole range. And now the range is failing quite badly. Part of the reason I say quite badly and not just the range is failing in a very plain sense is that as we're losing this support, we've also lost our wonderful 21 EMA. And, you know, that confluence I look for, losing the EMA at the same time that you're losing the RSI, it generally means that you're going to go for some kind of prolonged downturn. So we do have a chance here for the bulls to step in and really kind of scam wick this and save us. It's not a lower low just yet, but you're really looking at this, you know, the kind of the bottoms, toward the bottoms of these sort of things and the top of this. It's not really precise. It's very old price action. That's from, you know, almost a year ago. So it's not too valid to consider this bottom green line as much of anything. It's just not recent enough. But this support that's failed quite recently, that's bad news for us. So we need to look for where we might find some support. And it doesn't look great. To be honest, we don't have a whole lot to go on. You might point to some position like this where you've kind of got the bottom of this red and these bodies. You've got some interaction here and this wick as, again, a close enough. These are kind of, for me, close enough. And you might point to something like this if we were to continue down, which right now we're making that very aggressive downturn from our all-time high as Bitcoin continues to shit itself and drag everything else down. DOT's not special here. It's not like especially flooding DOT or anything like that. All the DeFi tokens look pretty bad right now. The whole market looks pretty bad right now. So if you're a DOT fanboy, that's okay. Just understand that the likelihood of this very old support still holding is probably pretty low. We're not seeing any reaction. Like here, we hit what were probably a good number of limit orders on the books, and we had a good spring off of that. Right now, we're not seeing that at all. We're not seeing any buying pressure whatsoever from this, so there's no reason to expect that someone's going to step in and buy like millions of dollars of spot and push this up. Most likely continuing down, and unless this turns into a wick like in the next couple of days, I would expect this to be something that we should just go ahead and flip to the red and start looking much lower. And my target for this would be, you know, my first place that I would be looking would be somewhere down here, which is pretty brutal. You know, that's like, it's quite a bit down there, but you want to be realistic. You don't want to be holding this if we lose this line. Like, that would be my final ejection point. If you lose this, you should just get out. No matter how much you love the project, no matter how bullish you are about its future, be bullish, but be bullish lower, and, you know, end up with more tokens than you have now. For ETH, we talked about the purple line here. This is the 1 week resistance, which I should probably label so I don't have to point that out. Support, I keep saying the wrong thing. 1 week support, I can't spell, but here we are, the 1 week support. And we discussed that there's a chance, of course, of this support coming into play and getting some kind of relief rally. We've had this parabolic downturn well below the EMA. We're pretty close to oversold, but it makes sense that we would want some kind of relief rally, some kind of breakout of this downturn parabola makes sense. And what better place to have that relief than at a weekly support. The problem is that it doesn't have to be much of a relief to kind of reset this RSI. It doesn't have to be much of a relief to still be under the 21 EMA and to then fail at this resistance and continue deeper. So don't get too bullish yet on this kind of thing, even though it is bouncing at a weekly support. We're still very firmly under our most recent swing high, nowhere near it, as a matter of fact. And it looks like we might even be putting in some kind of new daily resistance at this point. Around, what is this, 1850s, 1860s? So at this point, we might be considering this area to be more of our local resistance. Time will tell, but for the moment, I still am not very bullish on this having some kind of immediate reversal. I think we need to see some more pain, but unless this turns into a real relief that takes this lost support and then continues onward, breaks through this EMA, breaks the RSI out to the top half, and is able to continue, not just like some wick up and then back down, then I don't see any reason to be bullish on this. Still no reason to be bullish on this. If you were going to long, the weekly support was the place to do it. But if you're still waiting around for a long, this would be your next place to long. You want to retake that, what is that, 2150-ish as a support again and see continuation upward. That's where you would want to long. Else you should just be waiting for whenever this relief bounce stalls out, whether it's here, or even if you get some kind of V-shaped kind of scam wick that turns south, wherever this tops out, if it even is a relief pump, which it's not much of one from the look of it, wherever this tops out, I would be more interested in shorting that than looking for a long right now. I still think we're going to end up down here, and so far no reason to believe otherwise. No trend reversal, no signs of trend reversal, no interest right now. The eyes are really on Bitcoin, which has shown a little bit of strength the past couple of days, but not very much. You can see from this purple line, we found kind of an interim support. This candle body, lower low sort of line that I've drawn. Well, we've really just put in 5 in a way. I guess this is about a horizontal more than a lower low. So you have an argument here that maybe there's some kind of double bottom, or if you're looking at the wicks, you can say we've got a much higher one now. Should that be a reason for hope? Not yet. Not yet. It looks better than it has for a little bit, but that's not surprising considering how much sell-off we had here that some people would be interested in buying. What's very worrying to me is that you have something like this where there are 3 days of pretty solid buying and then they're just erased, like deleted. So in one day you delete the past 3 days of buying, it's all gone. So how much more buying interest is there going to be if this kind of selling is still happening? Because no one wants to sell. No one wants to sell their Bitcoin for like 35 or 30K. We want to sell our Bitcoin at like 65, 85, 100. You know, we all have high aspirations for this project. We all want it to succeed. But what we're really seeing is that at the moment, the trend is still down. You know, you just take the average price of this price action and it goes above and it goes below. But whatever it does, even if it comes up a bit, the trend is down and you don't want to fight that. So far, all we've done is come back to the bottom of this sort of crab zone, this support block, which is now resistance, and we have not broken into it whatsoever. I still think for bulls to have any case, this is the point that they really need to take. The sort of line right here where everything has used it as support and now just used it as a resistance. I think that's the line that's most important right now. Otherwise, without taking that, even if we come up to it, you know, or above it, but it doesn't hold, I'm still looking at this, still looking toward the 1 week support. And, you know, the trend is your friend. That's all you can say. The trend is down, and, you know, you've had this little relief pump that gave your RSI room to fall. It's nowhere near oversold at this point. We're still well below the EMA here, so even if we get some kind of, you know, attempted breakout like this, just simply closing like a day or two above the EMA doesn't really mean anything, right? You can see that here. We come up above the 50 RSI, we come up above the EMA, but we don't really accomplish anything with that. We hit a resistance and we reject completely. So we might do the same thing. We might come up here above the EMA, above the 50 RSI, like a couple days or something. Then if we reject, it doesn't matter. What we really need is to take this position and hold it. And that would give us the kind of continuation dream we need to head toward the top of this crab zone. But so far there's no sign that that's going to happen. There's no reason to believe that's going to happen. China hasn't released any new news this week. Nothing good anyway. News outlets, basically the Chinese version of the New York Times has been comparing the spread of crypto to the spread of corona. Like very, I mean, it's kind of a stretch, right? But that's the Chinese media, so it's all the people there really have access to. So still the FUD campaign by the government in China is going on. Still not going to have the Chinese miners back online for several months. And in the meantime, they're not producing coins that can go to market and, you know, coins that will be held. It's just kind of retail right now and what retail wants to do. And retail tends to be pretty afraid of everything. So a lot of new people in the game now who are not used to holding, have never seen a bear market before, and are just shitting their pants. So doesn't look good at the moment. Still looking for this accumulation zone. I think we're going to see numbers starting with the 2 before too long. It's not going to take as long as maybe I thought it was. I think by the end of July, of course, so long that we'll get to see that, even if it's brief. If you look at the weekly Bitcoin, it kind of illustrates this point, you know, and just because we were talking about it, look at the FTT, what we were talking about before, this little area right here, and then look at the Bitcoin weekly, and it's like pretty similar. That's why people are kind of saying these are mirrored. But as far as the Bitcoin weekly goes, you didn't really have, like, people were really bullish, I guess, on this particular candle because they thought it might break out, and then just rejection. And here it's easier to see that we've got a very clear lower low all the way down to this 28.8 weekly support. I mean, that's the last time we had any support. And below that, this whole area, there's nothing. It's nothing. There's no support until around 19.4. So if you look at the high time frame Bitcoin, you know, you had this distribution sort of top, you spilled out of it, and so far we're still spilling out of it. And the fact that we've already tested support and really failed after testing support to flip any resistances, to even close, you know, to even close like in the zone, doesn't look good to me. And once this fails, which I feel it's going to happen, you know, at some point very soon. Once this happens, I think people will just full panic. I think we'll visit, I won't say we'll teleport down here, but I think we'll visit something close to this very, very quickly. I'm not necessarily calling like 19,380 exactly, you know, maybe we hit like this, or maybe people look toward this and we create some new support in the middle of this. But I think once this does fail, we are going to kind of teleport down quite a bit. And I think there will be a lot of buying pressure from this area, but I don't think there's going to be too much buying pressure here. People are going to be too scared. And, you know, you're going to have a lot of people who want to long, but not a lot of people who want to buy spot. And most likely those longs will just get absolutely wrecked, and people will just brag about how they didn't buy yet and, you know, they're waiting or whatever. But that's our market today. That was KSM, FTT, and DOT. Of course, every day we'll do ETH and Bitcoin. So if you have a request for next time, please feel free. You can throw it in chat, you can DM me, you can comment on the VOD later when I upload that. If there's something that you'd like to see or some kind of news that you'd like to discuss, I live to serve, so just let me know what you want and we can accommodate to that. Otherwise, best of luck to any trades, and I will see you next time. Thanks for coming by.